The last time we were together, we covered Peter's denials. Was the last thing that we did. He is at Caiaphas's mansion palace. The Sanhedrin is meeting there upstairs with Jesus. Peter and guards and apparently John are all down below, staying close to the fire because it's cold. Um, Peter's recognized, nope, it's not me. I'm not a follower of Jesus. No, 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 no. So 3 times he denies Jesus. The rooster crows as Jesus and Peter make some kind of eye contact from down below and up above. And Peter runs out of the courtyard weeping bitterly. So that means that it is Friday morning. We're finally done with the night of all of Thursday's events. It's only taken us about 2 months to do one night. So we're in Matthew 27:1, Mark 15:1, Luke 23:1, and John chapter 18. I should write this on this shiny old board. Okay, so Matthew 27, Mark 15, Luke 23, and John 18. Listen to that squeak on that shiny board.
It's not chalk.
Okay, so Jesus was in the garden. He prayed the prayers. The chief priests, elders of the people, Pharisees, some detachment of security from the temple, and Roman soldiers come to Gethsemane to take Jesus away. He goes to Caiaphas, first to Annas, then to Caiaphas, for these illegal trials in the middle of the night in front of the Sanhedrin. They find him worthy of death for blasphemy. um, and so the problem is that the Jewish leadership, even though they have the ability to find somebody guilty of a crime, somebody worthy of death, they don't have any actual authority under the Roman system to sentence somebody to death and execute that capital punishment. So Jesus has to go to Pontius Pilate, who was the governor of that territory, to get the approval or permission to have Jesus executed. But before we get there, one moment, potential spam is calling me.
In a while.
Before they can get Jesus to Pontius Pilate, Matthew um, uh, Matthew makes a little deke to talk about Judas. So in Matthew 27, verse 3, it says, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, so apparently he's right there close by too, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What's that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, it is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners, Gentiles. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Okay. Peter's denied Jesus. John is in the courtyard. Somewhere close by, Judas becomes aware that Jesus has been condemned to death for blasphemy, and he has some kind of feeling. It would seem like maybe by this point, whatever spiritual negative spiritual influence he has received from Satan has now left him. At least it's not quite as heavy on him anyway. And so he feels remorse for what he has done to Jesus. Maybe he never believed that Jesus would be found guilty, that he would be tried, found innocent, and then released. I I can give Judas the benefit of the doubt there. um, the verb that is used there for being seized with remorse usually is translated changed his mind. It's not exactly repentance, even though repent means to change your mind. Usually there's some other level of meaning there, um, that you would not just have a change of heart or a change of mind, but you would do something about it. Here, Judas's remorse doesn't feel quite so deep, but he goes back to the leadership, probably at the temple, and he tries to give the money back. And I'm going to go with I believe he is trying to stop this vendetta against Jesus. Um, so he takes the money, take it back, and the Jewish leadership says no. This money is korban. It is money that is given as an offering, stored in the sacred treasury of the temple, and so gifts gifts that were dedicated were called korban, and then the place where they were stored at the temple was also came to be known as the korban as well. So, but Judas brings this money, this blood money. I don't want this. I don't want this anymore. I'm giving it back to you. Stop it. Just call it off. And they won't accept it into the treasury because it's dirty money. It's guilty. Um, and it seems like the bigger point is that the so-called righteous Jewish leadership is willing to railroad an innocent man to execution, but they won't accept this blood money to be given to the temple, money that they paid a traitor for the betrayal. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're going to give you 30 pieces of silver so you will betray this man, but we can't take it back because that's guilty blood money. We're way too righteous to accept it.
Yes.
And it's just
So
the height of irony and hypocrisy.
What did
Yeah.
he think? What do you think he was thinking? He knew, didn't he know? Don't you think he knew ahead of time that they were going to uh put Jesus to death? Well, I know you said,
I don't know. I mean, it's all we have is speculation,
yeah,
but for me, as a man who is perpetually racked by guilt and shame for decisions that I have made, it is not impossible for me to look at Judas and say, I don't I don't know if he understood that Jesus was going to be killed by the Jewish leadership. There were when they're recruiting, when the chief priests and the teachers of the law and the Pharisees are looking for somebody to betray Jesus, I don't know that on the ad it said so we can kill him. Maybe he just thought that they would arrest him, they would try him, that there wouldn't be any evidence to convict him. I mean, Judas has been there for 3 years like everybody else. Let's see, he has healed people, he has fed people, he has performed miracles, he has been hailed as the hero of the people. So this is easy money, and it's not going to cost anybody anything. I can get some cash, and Jesus will be set free because he hasn't done anything worthy of death.
In his own mind.
As you have heard me say many times before, in my movie, I'm willing to give Judas at least a little bit of a wiggle room that he is not necessarily bloodthirsty. Now, there are as many others, commentators and scholars, who would say that if Judas has these like extremely far right, super nationalistic, hyper patriotic views, that he is a zealot and willing to kill to get Romans out. And he thought that Jesus would end up being the Messiah who would bring about the revolution. He could be doing this as payback for Jesus's milksoppy weakness in his mind. And so if that's the case, then Judas is a lot more aggressive and a little more hell-bent on some revenge. I don't know where the reality is. I think there's enough room in the text that we can never say without a shadow of a doubt exactly what was going on in Judas.
That doesn't exactly line up with his remorse. Usually people that are that far out wouldn't.
As we'll see from some other people in just a few paragraphs. But yeah, I think you're right. He has a change of mind. Like, maybe I shouldn't have done this. What was I thinking? This was a mistake. I don't want this money. I'm going to give it back to them. It'll all be over, and we can go back to the way that things were.
Well, it kind of had to play out this way for him to fulfill what Jesus had said was gonna happen.
Jesus knows that.
Yeah.
Judas does not know that. Because again, the disciples are still kind of thick-headed about the fact that Jesus has said on many more times than one occasion, the Son of Man is going to go to Jerusalem. He's going to be betrayed into the hands of sinful men. He will be arrested. He will be executed, crucified, buried, and raised on the third day. They have not picked this up yet. I don't think that Judas is the exception where he understands it, but nobody else does. I think they're all blissfully unaware of what is going to unfold in the next couple of hours. We won't take this money back, Judas. It's blood money. You've betrayed a guy to death for it. So it can't go into the temple. We can't accept your tithe check because it came from ill-gotten gains. And he doesn't care. He just leaves it there. Some movie, some trans, what's the word I'm looking for? Some depiction of this, he throws the bag of coins and they scatter all over the floor of the temple, jingling and shining, and he runs back out of the temple. And so they collect up the coins and they don't know what to do with it. They won't put this filthy money into the temple treasury. So there is a decision that is made according to Matthew's Matthew's account where they buy a plot of ground. But we're going to put a pause there for a moment. So what Matthew tells us is that he goes out and uh, and and hangs himself. John's version, sorry, Luke in Acts, he gives a little more insight. He is a doctor. I don't know if it's more medically accurate or what. But if you go to Acts chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, he says, with the payment Judas received for his wickedness, he bought a field. There he fell headlong, his body burst open, and all his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this, so they called that field in their language Akeldama, which is the field of blood. Okay.
So do you believe Matthew or do you believe Luke?
I don't think they're necessarily, the big word would be incongruent. I don't think that they are necessarily impossible to mesh together. Here's the way that I would understand it. Judas runs out of the temple. He goes and hangs himself on a tree in this field. Whether he bought it or they bought it with his money, I suppose it could make the argument that that's the same thing. It is possible that that field was somehow connected to the temple, like it was the place where they dug up some of the resources to make things for the temple. Um, it's not exactly clear. Um, Matthew and John are not impossibly irreconcilable. He goes to the temple to return the money. They refuse. All the guilt is on Judas. He is filled with further remorse. He leaves and hangs himself in a field somewhere nearby. The leaders use the money to buy the field. As Judas's body is unclean because it's dead. If you're a Jew, you can't touch unclean dead things. That will make them ceremonially unclean. And because they are super righteous guys, they're not going to have anything to do with it, nor will anybody else. And so poor Judas just hangs there in the tree for
Till the rope breaks?
a while until
Is he still hanging in there?
until either the rope breaks or he's been there long enough that his body
It's starting to
disintegrates, comes apart, and his body falls to the ground, busts open. And it's interesting that the word that it uses there for his intestines spill out, that's one of my favorite Greek words. Every time we talk about the compassion of Jesus, he feels it in his guts. That's what leaks out of poor Judas. All of his guts, all of his cores, all over the place. And so,
lunch.
yeah, that's pretty graphic, gross detail. This decomposing fermented body explodes on impact on the ground. And so that place is referred to as the field of blood, either a reference to the price paid for by treason or Judas's disgusting crashing end.
Nasty either way.
Again, in my movie, in my head, it's pretty simple to jive those two events. Just Matthew and Luke are focusing on two very different aspects of it. Matthew makes a reference up there in verse 9 um, about the prophet Jeremiah, which is kind of a puzzling thing. Um, there is a much clearer reference made by the prophet Zechariah in chapter 11 of his book. It says in Zechariah 11:12, I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter at the house of the Lord. Well, that seems way closer to what's going on. It could be that that initially there hadn't been the name of a specific prophet listed there. And so, as some scribe somewhere along the way was being helpful and filled in the name of a prophet, he filled in Jeremiah instead of Zechariah. Uh, Jeremiah the prophet does talk about potters, and he did buy a field, but the Zechariah one makes a lot more sense. If it has to be Jeremiah, then there is a passage in chapter 19 of his book, which is probably the best candidate. There, Jeremiah is told by the Lord to go to the potter, to go to a valley. Disaster is coming for everyone's forsaking of the Lord. And so the valley will be called a valley of slaughter. Again, it's kind of a gross, disturbing chapter as well. Um, but if it's got to be Jeremiah, it's probably Jeremiah 19. Um, it's a Jeremiah 19 is as disturbing as Judas's end is disturbing. So um, I don't know what to make of all that, other than to say that's that's what it is. So and so after we get Judas's story wrapped up, that the traitor is filled with remorse and tries to undo what he has done and cannot, and in his grief hangs himself. Then Matthew turns back to Pontius Pilate, as do the other three gospels. So Matthew 27:11, Mark 15:2, Luke 23:2, or back there in John 18. So in Matthew 27:11, it says, meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus replied, you have said so. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they're bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even a single charge, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. The other passages are pretty similar to that. um, Mark says it's very early in the morning. Are you the king of the Jews? You've said so. He made no reply. Pilate was amazed. Luke 23, the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. They began to accuse him. He gives a little more information in Luke 23, 2. We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king. So Pilate asked Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus replied, you have said so. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no basis for a charge against this man. John 18:28. The Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. Now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man? If he weren't a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Okay, so uh, it's really early in the morning, probably sometime after 6, but before 8. So it's still pretty early for any kind of government business, certainly for a trial. They come to Pilate, who is the Roman procurator of Judea and Samaria. He lives in the palace in Jerusalem. Everybody in Jerusalem and Judea hates Pilate. He is known for his cruelty, both in the way that he governs and the actions that he takes against his people, because he is a dirty, rotten Roman, a Gentile. The Jewish leadership won't go into his home because if they were to do that, they would be unclean. And we're about to have a festival. We're in the middle of a festival. We want to have a Passover celebration with our families, and so we're not going into your house. He comes out to them, um, and hears that this man is a subverter of the nation. He has been telling the people not to pay taxes to Caesar, and that he has claimed to be the Messiah. He has claimed to be the King of the Jews. Only some of that is remotely true. I mean, Jesus did say, "Give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what's God's." I don't know exactly how they've arrived at the fact that he says don't pay your taxes, but that's what they go with. Um, and John tells us that the reason that they went to Pilate is only simply to get approval and permission to have Jesus executed. In their mind, he's guilty of blasphemy because he is claimed to be from God. That is not the charge that they bring to Rome because Rome doesn't care about that. Claim to be God all you want. They got a whole building full of gods all over the Roman Empire. So they go with the political end of things. He's an insurrectionist. He is a revolutionary. If you don't deal with this guy, you're going to have problems. um, John 18:32, this took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he is going to die. An innocent man is being unjustly condemned and executed at the hands of the Jewish leaders. They're the ones pushing for it. It's coming through just as Jesus had said. And during all of this presentation, Jesus doesn't have any kind of resistance or reply. That in itself is kind of remarkable because every single one of us, if we are falsely accused of anything, who ate the last brownie? Well, it wasn't me. I mean, we're always quick to make sure that we don't get blamed for something else that somebody else has done. But Jesus doesn't say a word. And at least two of the gospel writers make note of the fact that Pilate is not just curious about it, but he is exceedingly surprised, exceedingly amazed. He marvels at the fact that in the face of the death sentence, that this prisoner doesn't say a peep. No, nuh-uh, that's not true. You're a bunch of liars. I never said that. I never did that. Your Honor, I don't know where they're coming up. Not any resistance at all. Uh, so Pilate asked Jesus very directly, They say you've claimed to be the king of the Jews. Are you, in fact, the king of the Jews? And his answer is, well, you said so. Or some of the translations have, it is as you say.
Are we still in John 18? Cause it says. Jesus replied, is this your own question or did others tell you about me?
Yeah. Do you want to know? Did you hear that? Is this your own accusation or are you carrying water for these men? It is as you say. You have said it with your own lips. Now, when we look at Luke in chapter 23, Luke notes that Pilate really does try to dismiss the case. I find no basis for a charge against this man. He's a politician. If he doesn't have to deal with this, if he doesn't have to get mixed up in this Jewish squabble, he doesn't want to. This is your deal. This is Jewish law. Go try them on your own. I don't need to be involved in this. He just wants it to go away. But even as he asked the question, the chief priests and the elders and everybody else who's there to accuse Jesus, they get much, much louder. The description is that they get fiercely urgent. That's the underlying meaning of the words there. When they insist, fiercely urgent. They just won't let it go. They're getting louder and louder. They say this man Jesus is working to launch a revolution all over Judea. He is a disturber of the peace. He is an instigator. He is an insurrectionist. You've got to get rid of this man. He is a threat to Rome. They're painting him in the absolute worst possible light. And so, this guy, somebody makes the comment somewhere along the way, this man from Galilee. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Galilee? Oh, well, that's a different territory. So we're going to send Jesus. You take Jesus down the street or across the courtyard, depending on where you believe that he is. Nobody can really agree, A, where Pilate lived, and B, where Herod's palace is, and C, if Herod Antipas, who is Herod the Great's son, is he living in Herod's palace in Jerusalem while he's visiting the city? I'm sending you to Herod. He is the ruler over the Galilean territory. This is a local Galilee matter, so let's ship him off. Herod Antipas is one of the sons of Herod the Great. Jesus is from Nazareth, which is in the region of Galilee. And so this son of Herod the Great is the same one that not very many months earlier had ordered the beheading of John the Baptist. And Herod has been hoping to meet Jesus. He has been hoping that he could see Jesus do some kind of miraculous sign, show off some of your power. Because as the ruler over Galilee, everybody there is talking about him. So I guess we should probably look at that a little bit better. In Luke chapter 23, verse 6, on hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, But Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies.
So do you think that that he didn't want to condemn him, that's why he sent him back, because it wasn't his jurisdiction?
I think Pilate is looking for a way to pass the buck. I believe that Herod is unwilling to accept the buck and bucks the buck right back up the food chain to Pilate. Herod doesn't want to be the one who condemns this incredibly popular miracle worker and teacher to death. He is disappointed that he didn't get the magic show from Jesus. But he is willing to ridicule him, make fun of him, dress him up like a king, and send him back in luscious royal robes back to Pilate. Um,
Because Herod was a politician.
Herod is also a politician. And the gospel writer there notes that at this event, what had been a tense relationship between Herod and Pilate, now they're political allies and the best of pals.
Yeah.
Did they even see each other or they?
Um, Probably not in that particular moment, but they would have been in the same circles often. One of the one of the maps that I looked at this week, if Pilate was living in Herod the Great's palace in Jerusalem, which is not unlikely, Herod Antipas, when he came down from Galilee to stay in Jerusalem, would have stayed in the same palace, maybe at a different end of the courtyard. And so they're across the hall from each other, essentially, at other ends of the same palace complex, the West Wing and the East Wing. So it's likely that the next day they're having dinner together to discuss what had taken place. But at least not in this moment. It's not like Herod marched him back to Pilate himself and said, I'm not doing this, you take care. So it is still very early in the morning, before 8 or 8:30 anyway. Jesus is back before Pilate. Pilate insists that he cannot find any fault in Jesus. There is no reason to give in to the Jewish demands for the death sentence. And I suppose if we understand that Pilate is well known for his cruelty as a ruler, the fact that he finds that there's no evidence to sentence this man probably says something about how innocent Jesus really is. I mean, if the meanest, nastiest ruler isn't willing to just throw him to the wolves immediately, there's clearly no real reason to find Jesus guilty. He knows that it is jealousy and self-promotion that is prompting the Jewish leadership to bring these proceedings against Jesus. See here. No.
So initially, they were just gonna, like it says in here, flog to then release him.
Yeah, that's the decision that he'll make. In Matthew's chapter 27, he has a little blurb in there that nobody else talks about. In verse 19, At some point in the morning, Pilate's wife sends a word to her husband as he is engaged in all of this. So I don't know if Jesus is standing right there in front of him, or if it's just all the Jewish leaders, or whatever. But the message comes from Mrs. Pilate. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man. I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. So again, it's early in the morning. She's just getting up. She sends a word to her husband. I have not slept well all night long. I've had horrible dreams about this man. Don't have anything to do with him. Maybe she is seeing what's going to happen to Pilate as a result of condemning Jesus to death. We don't really know. All it says is that she's had all these bad dreams. um, it's in the way that I read all of these pieces together, it would seem like this message comes during the next conversation that Jesus is having with Pilate in John 18, verse 33. There it says, Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Is that your own idea? Jesus asked, or did others talk to you about me? Am I a Jew? Pilate replied, your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done? Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders, but now my kingdom is from another place. You are a king then, Pilate said. Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Pilate retorted, what is truth? With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, I find no basis for a charge against him. Okay, so Jesus is before Pilate. Pilate hands him off to Herod. Herod hands him right back to Pilate. Pilate and Jesus had this quiet conversation inside the palace. As Pilate gets the message from his wife, to quote Han Solo, I got a bad feeling about this. Steer clear. He tries to release him. Are you a king? Well, you said that I'm a king. Oh, so you do have a kingdom, so you are a king. I didn't come to be king. To I came to testify to the truth. Everybody who is concerned with truth listens to what I have to say, which means if you're really concerned about truth, Pilate, you'd listen to me. Pilate doesn't even know what truth is because he's a politician. There's my truth, your truth, their truth, whose truth? Doesn't mean anything. But he still can't find a reason to have Jesus executed. This is a Jewish matter. This is an interior Jewish religious theological squabble. Get me out of it. Um, then all four gospels focus on the next piece a little differently. John goes on to say in verse 39 of chapter 18, but it is your custom for me, speaking to the Jewish leaders outside on the pavement, with us presumably Jesus still dressed in this ridiculous king outfit that Herod sent him back in. It's your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews? This one right here. They shouted back, no, not him. Give us Barabbas. And then John says, now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. When you put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John together, the indication is that this man Barabbas is a notorious criminal. whatever it is that he's been involved in, some sort of uprising, some kind of insurrection against the Romans. During the execution of this insurrection, somebody died. And because of that, Barabbas and others have been arrested and they are imprisoned. And it would seem to me like the plan is to that day execute Barabbas for his role in this insurrection against the emperor. His name is Jesus Barabbas. Now, it's possible to make too much out of stuff like this. Bar means the son of. Abbas means the father. His name is Jesus,
Son of the Father.
son of the Father. So you have Jesus, the son of the Father, who is guilty of being a revolutionary, trying to cause an uprising against the Romans. Or you have Jesus, who is the actual son of the Father in heaven, who has been accused of bringing in an insurrection against the Romans. Some scholars feel like the bad Barabbas's name it's more like a nickname, and that he is the son of a rabbi, that he is the black sheep of the family. Maybe, again, in the Sayers movie, that this Barabbas is the son of one of the men in the Sanhedrin who is calling for the death of Jesus and the release of this wayward son. There's no proof of that, but man, that makes for great cinema right there. um, we'll come back and talk about it again in a couple of weeks because we're not even going to get to the crucifixion today. But the fact that there are 3 crosses, the word that's used to describe the men on either side of Jesus is the same word that is used to describe Barabbas, that he is an insurrectionist. So it seems possible that all 3, Jesus, Barabbas, and these 2 evil henchmen, are a part of the insurrection plot that took place. And so if that's the case, then Jesus is taking the place of, we're just swapping out one Jesus, son of the Father, who's accused of insurrection for another. In a Roman mind, one dead Jew is as good as another. Dying with thieves, rebels, revolutionaries. I have not said yet so far in the last 45 minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments about anything? I've just been sort of on a roll.
Who is they in chapter or John 18:40, the very last verse? Because I know
They shouted back.
in the movies it was just the people. Who are they?
Who are they? Okay. Well, again, I believe it is kind of a mixed bag. So it is at a minimum the chief priests, the elders of the people, the council of the Sanhedrin, some temple security, All the people who have brought Jesus over to Pilate, they're there. But I also believe that anybody who has been aligned with Barabbas, all the people who hate the Romans anyway, they're there to make sure that, I mean, they're making a last ditch, final stroke of midnight kind of appeal to have Barabbas released. So I think it's all of his very best friends, all of his comrades in arms against the Romans. So it's all these kind of bloodthirsty revolutionary hooligans.
They would rather see Jesus who performed miracles.
They want their Barabbas back.
They probably weren't even following Jesus.
Yeah, this other Jesus, we don't care about him. We want to be rid of Rome. And a guy like Barabbas is exactly the guy who can do it. This other guy is a milk toast. He hasn't done anything except, love people and feed them and bring healing. Who cares about that? We want somebody who's going to kick Rome to the curb.
Nice crowd.
Probably would have been kind of a scary, ugly, nasty place to be on a Friday morning. Plus, if it is just made up of people who are curious about what's going on at the governor's mansion that morning, just people from the city, the chief priests and the teachers of the law are described as having persuaded the crowd. What Mark says in chapter 15 is that the verb that he uses to say that the Jewish leaders indicted Jesus for stirring up the nation. That same verb is the word that he uses to describe what those Jewish leaders are doing to the crowd. They are inciting them to violence, the way that they accuse Jesus of inciting the nation to violence. Some of the irony there is pretty thick. So the idea of that verb is that they're really doing the rabble rousing. They're just trying to whip people into a frenzy. We really need this to have to take place, so we're going to say whatever we can to the crowd.
People would do that today.
I was
Right?
just gonna say that. I was just gonna say.
And I guess that would maybe help explain a little bit that this is not just, suburban families and, retired couples who have come to see what's going on down at the town square in the morning, that they go from, hey, isn't that the Jesus guy that came into the city a few days ago? I really liked him then. Let's have him dead. If you see that this crowd is made up of the supporters of guys like Barabbas, who hate the Romans anyway, who are out for blood, plus they're being kind of whipped into a froth by the Jewish leadership, like, oh, now I see how they go from, we don't care about him, kill him, whatever. Just, we want Barabbas back. That's always bugged me, how you can go from Sunday morning and afternoon. This guy is the greatest thing ever. We think he's the Messiah too. We're sick of looking at his face, have him killed.
Listening to other people who can't think for themselves.
And it's probably not entirely the same crowd.
Yeah, different.
That sounds more logical than it's not the same crowd.
And probably most of them were Jewish leadership.
Yeah. Well, if you watch the wells and they're back there egging them on.
Sure.
Because if, they're saying they want Barabbas, they're the ones who want Barabbas, and these guys are egging us on. Yeah, go ahead and say that.
Yeah.
Without making any kind of a significant political statement here, I guess it would be the same thing as, who is it that's providing the bricks and the signs when there are protests in America? There's somebody behind the scenes who's making sure that everybody's got their own rocks. So, all right, so you want me to release the King of the Jews? No. Give us Barabbas. Famously, Pilate washes his hands. That's Matthew 27, verse 24. He gets some water, he washes his hands in front of the people to say, this is not my thing. This is not my deal. You've called for the death of this innocent man. The burden of it is going to be on you, not on himself, which is political expediency. This is not my deal. I'm going to let it happen, but it's all your fault. And the crowd that's there, like, well, they don't care. His blood is on us and our children. So they are assuming responsibility for Christ's punishment and death. Remember that Matthew is writing his gospel to show the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah that had been promised to them. So in including this line, his blood be on us and our children, he really is kind of painting with a very big brush the rejection of the Jewish Messiah by the entirety of the Jewish nation. We'll be guilty of it. We just want him to be dead. And in some kind of twisted, I don't know what even what the right word is, in John 19, as Jesus is being sentenced, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. The Jewish leaders kept shouting, if you let this man go, you're no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. When Pilate heard this, he thought he brought Jesus out and sat down on the stone. Here's your king. The chief priests and the elders claimed to be faithful citizens of the empire. And they really hate so much. We're not Romans. You are a Roman. But you're unwilling to do this very Roman thing to support your emperor. This man wants to overthrow the government. How can you say you're a friend of Caesar, that you're his ally, that you're a faithful servant of the empire, when you won't condemn this revolutionary to death? So just one more little stick and twist of the knife. And so finally, Pilate gives in to the demand for the death sentence and sends Jesus away to be flogged. He's willing to give the crowd exactly what they want, even though he could not personally find any executable offense in Jesus. Pilate is politically weak, is personally weak, and is willing to yield to Jewish demands for fear of being ousted by Rome. He's saving his own neck. And that is all I have to say about that.
He wasn't weak enough to go against his wife. That's the most strength he had.
Who does that?
Would dare.
Just for my own information, do we know anything about what happens in Barabbas's life after this?
No, but there are books and movies about it.
Anthony Quinn played Barabbas.
That movie is old.
Where did Matthew get all his information? He wasn't one of, John was the only one that followed.
Matthew followed him.
Matthew followed him?
He was,
Followed Jesus, yeah.
No, at the
Oh.
end. They all ran away, except,
I would assume,
because he,
and all we can do is make assumptions or presumptions that the disciples were made aware of how things went down by some people who were there. And whether they came themselves and hid in the corners, or family members did, friends did, probably some of the women that we will see in the next couple chapters that are with Jesus all the way to the cross. Those women are brave enough that they will follow him anywhere, even if all the disciples are hiding away in a locked room. So maybe that's the source for it.
His account is so much more than the other.
The women weren't really under the same threat as the guys were, because it was a male dominated system. They were much more, so if there was women following Jesus, I mean, the leadership wouldn't be,
They didn't count.
I don't wanna say that, but.
Yeah, that was.
It didn't count for much. I mean, it was like
That's what they would have said.
that, yeah, you know, so it just didn't impress on them that they were a threat, simply because they were female, even if they were following. So any number of, I'm speculating too, any number of female followers could have been in that crowd and saw it all. But that's just a guess too.
That kind of sounds logical, yeah.
That's my story. I'm sticking it.
And is that in your movie?
My movie's getting longer and longer.
When do we get to watch it?
Apparently haven't. I'll have some time then to do it. All right. Well, we will stop here. And in 2 weeks, pick up with the flogging and beating of Jesus before we get to the crucifixion. This is not fun territory to cover. It's painful. So if you happen to be watching on YouTube, feel free to go back and see this again, or some of the other things that maybe you've missed.
Tell Robert Wendy to be safe.
Currently, I'm the only person looking at this screen.